Go ahead, fire questions.
Well, I guess to start, what's your reaction to War and Enoch coming back? Were you surprised at all, or what were your thoughts going in?
Well, I'm excited. I think that each of them went through a process to gain as much feedback as they could and make the decision they felt like was best moving forward. And we're obviously a big recipient, and to have two of the better players in the league back for this coming season will certainly make us a more talented team, more experienced team, and so I'm really, really excited. I feel bad that Jordan really didn't have an opportunity at team workouts, at the combine, to really show what he could do. Everybody, I think, for the most part, that puts their name in the hat, so to speak, to go through the draft process, they do it with the goal in mind of getting drafted or, making that jump to the NBA. And it's what I dreamed about when I was a little kid. And, he really didn't get a fair shake. He had to sort of show who he was throughout the year. He had a terrific sophomore year. But I think he did make, in my opinion, an extremely mature decision. I think, I don't know what the percentages would be, but it seems like 8 out of 10 guys, if they knew they were going to get selected in the draft, that'd be good enough for them in 2019. Maybe 10 years ago, it's like, hey, if I'm not a first rounder, I'm going to come back to school. And so Jordan was very consistent in what he told me. Coach, I didn't feel like I was going to be a first round pick. I'm coming back. Stephen was a little different. I don't think he was projected throughout any of the process of being drafted. But I think he wanted to find out what he needs to work on, what teams that did work him out thought of him. And, I think that Steve's been extremely motivated since he's been back, as has Jordan. So, again, really, really excited to have, what I consider two of the better players in the league back.
Coach, it would be an understatement to say that expectations among the Cardinal fan base have ratcheted up. And I'm assuming somewhat around this building, though tempered somewhat. So how do you embrace both those high expectations as well as deal with your players in terms of the grind out kind of stuff that they will need to do to meet those?
Well, I think you come to a place like Louisville because of those expectations. That's what I signed up for a year ago. I want to be at a place that's passionate about the sport of basketball, that wants to win a national championship. We're not going to run from those expectations. And I think that's why the guys that wear Cardinal uniforms, I think that's why they came here. To play in the biggest of big games, to compete for championships. And so those expectations are going to follow us. And that's okay. I think also making sure that our players are grounded in reality. And that reality is simply, we haven't done squat. It's all on paper. As I told Andy Katz on a podcast the other day, you could pull out last year's, preseason top 25, top 35, and you'd find a lot of teams on that list that didn't even make the NCAA tournament. So there's a lot of work between now and November when we play our first game at Miami, Florida. A lot of work to do. We got a lot of newcomers to transition to our team, to learn personalities, learn how to coach them, teach them. But I'd rather be doing that with the talent that we have now as opposed to a year ago when we only had really 9 healthy scholarship bodies.
So what did you think of Luke and Vince both immediately after Jordan's announcement, kind of alluding to the Final Four?
I mean, it is what it is. And that's, again, we embrace those expectations. We have big goals. We're going to shoot for the stars. And I think this group has a lot of work, like I said before, ahead of them. But last year, the ending really left a bad taste. Hopefully, in all of our players' mouths, it certainly did mine. And but we got a lot of work to do between now and when hopefully the tournament comes around.
Chris, with Steven, you said he has a little bit, he's been working hard since he's been back. Did he get a chance to do some workouts with some teams and get feedback? And what was the feedback, or what does he need to work on, I guess?
He did. I think that the speed of the game, which, again, both Jordan and Steven, I think, and they would probably tell you this as well, they need to be more consistent. I think with having a deeper team, with having more options, we're not so reliant on one guy to do something on a particular night in order for us to compete and win in a game. But the NBA game is completely different from the college game. And, Steven has to become, in my opinion, a consistent college player. A great force in the interior, a better rebounder, a more mobile ball screen defender. He just has to be the same guy every single night for us. Jordan has to become more consistent as a ball handler. He became a better defender a year ago. I want to see him make another jump. I think he has to be more efficient in terms of shooting the ball and scoring the ball. But it's all about winning, and it's all about the college level. That other stuff, that'll take care of itself. I think sometimes guys, they get in that way of thinking, hey, what do I have to show the NBA? Just be a winner and worry about that process when it comes around. And for both of those guys, it'll have an opportunity to come back around.
Chris, throughout this process, was there ever a moment that you thought Jordan was going to stay in the draft?
Yeah, it sure was. But at no point did I ever feel like it was final. When I saw people out and about, I would say, they'd ask me, what do you think of, Jordan? I said 50-50, and that didn't help them. They already knew that before they asked the question. But that's how I felt. And, I tried to give him my honest feedback. As a coach, he's going to look at me and say, obviously, Coach Mack's biased. He wants me to return to Louisville. But that wasn't the case in terms of, I told him that Louisville would be fine. We'd be a really good team. Without him, I wanted him to make the best decision with the accurate feedback that he got, and I wanted him to stick to his guns. Didn't want it to be a moving goalpost. What you told me on May 1st, I hope is true on May 29th when the decision had to be made, if that's what you really want. And I'll give him credit. Like I said, there's a lot of guys I think that they feel like their name's going to be heard on draft night. They're going to figure out a way to make it work. Some do, but a large majority of guys find themselves in all different types of countries and playing in the G League, making the same money that they could make a year from now, and quite honestly, not too much.
When did he let you know that he had made his decision, or were you sitting around like the rest of us, kind of waiting for that 11th hour?
Well, I would tell you that I talked to his dad the night before. He called at midnight. They were in California. I talked to him till about 1 a.m. And so that gave me a feel that there's serious grounds to him coming back. I really felt like his dad was asking questions and giving me information that was sort of finalized information, because he was done with his sort of tryout period. The next morning, Amy contacted me and said, Coach, we want to have all the forms ready if that decision ends up being the decision to come back to school, because we're going to be traveling. We're going to be on a flight from California to Chicago, the layover Chicago to Buffalo. They weren't going to get in until around the deadline, and they didn't want to be stuck on a tarmac and not be able to get the information to the right people, dropping their agent, informing the NBA, informing our athletic director. So I started to get a sense, but it wasn't until 9:15 at Gustavo's over some shrimp nachos with my kids, and I had 5 ladies around the table going. My wife, Lainey, her friend, Haley, her friend. So I went outside, and then Card Fam came up to me and goes, Coach. So I got to enjoy it before the rest of you all did for about 20 minutes.
Chris, and the process was new this year. Obviously, you won in the end because you got both of them coming back. A lot of coaches didn't. Is it a good thing to have it string out that long? And you were kind of, if you hadn't got those back, you would have been in limbo a little bit.
And there's so many different layers to answer that question. It's like, who are you serving? The NBA, college game, student athletes. I mean, it's just so hard to answer that question. You know, I've heard, why can't kids go through the draft and if they don't get drafted, you know, return to school? Does that include guys that do get drafted? Are they allowed to come back? You know, would that be fair? I think Larry Bird got drafted years ago and still played the next year. So, yeah, I'm not smart enough to figure out the best way. You know, the fact that Jordan was able to have access to an agent who has a lot better relationships around the league is on one hand, I think, pretty good. And on the other hand, it'd be scary if the agent has a, you know, predetermined way about it and sort of knows what he wants to do. But, you know, Jordan was in good hands. BDA, Bill Duffy and Associates, I thought did a really good job in their time, you know, they spent with Jordan. So
it seemed like the whole process was pretty much up and up, I guess. Did you ever feel like at any time either player had a bug or there was somebody trying to convince them what to do?
Sure. But I never felt like it was, you know, they were fighting. There was infighting going back and forth. You know, I let both of those guys sort of do their thing. I wasn't, I didn't want to be over the top. I didn't want to be, you know, constantly nagging. I mean, they have to get out there. And, you know, ultimately it really doesn't matter what I think if they're hell-bent on, you know, going one way or the other. I told them my job is to love them, and I'm going to give them the best feedback I can. I'm going to tell them what I would do if they were my son. But ultimately, they have to feel great about the decision that they make. And so whether that's they're in the process for a week and decide to come back, or whether they take it down to 9:30 on the 29th, I'm going to be fully supportive of that.
When you look back to when you took over the program and looking at this roster, what did you kind of see in Jordan's progress, I guess, or process